What happens when a billionaire CEO discovers something about his surrogate that changes everything he thought he knew about love? The medical file trembled in Calder Henrik's powerful hands as he read the words that would shatter his carefully constructed world. 6 months into what should have been a simple business arrangement, he had just learned the most profound secret about the woman carrying his child. A secret that would force him to question everything he believed about connection, vulnerability, and what it truly means to be worthy of love. Have you ever met someone who seemed to have everything figured out, only to discover they've been missing the most fundamental human experience of all? Have you ever wondered what happens when two people who've completely given up on romance find themselves drawn together by forces beyond their control? Welcome back to Mr. Roman's Story Vault, where we explore the extraordinary moments that transform ordinary lives. If you're new here, you're in for something special. And if you're returning, thank you for making this community what it is. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss the stories coming your way. Tonight's story centers on two souls who believed they were beyond love's reach. Calder Henrik, a muscular, commanding CEO who built a billion-dollar empire while his heart remained locked away after betrayal, and Keslin Mitchell, a brilliant, compassionate woman who sacrificed every chance at romance to care for the people she loved most. They entered into a surrogacy agreement thinking it would be straightforward, clinical, purely professional. Neither expected the walls around their hearts to begin crumbling. Neither anticipated that a business contract would become the foundation for the most profound connection of their lives. But when Calder discovered Keslin's secret, that at 28 years old, she had never experienced romantic love, never been cherished, never been shown what it felt like to be truly desired, everything changed. His response to this revelation didn't just surprise her. It left her trembling with emotions she'd never allowed herself to feel. What would you do if you discovered that someone extraordinary had been overlooked by the world? How would you respond if you realized that the person closest to you had never been shown their own worth? This is a story about second chances, about the courage it takes to be vulnerable, and about how the most unexpected circumstances can lead to the most beautiful transformations. It's about a man who thought he was hiring someone to carry his child, only to discover he was actually meeting the love of his life. So settle in, because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about timing, destiny, and the incredible power of seeing someone, truly seeing them for who they are. The 47th floor of the Henrik Industries Tower buzzed with the controlled chaos of a billion-dollar operation. From his corner office, Calder Henrik commanded a view of downtown Chicago that stretched to the lake, but his attention was focused on the quarterly reports spread across his mahogany desk. At 36, he had achieved what most men only dreamed of, a logistics empire that employed thousands, real estate holdings across 3 states, and enough wealth to last several lifetimes. Yet as he signed another acquisition deal, the silence of his penthouse apartment echoed in his mind. Calder hadn't always been alone. Growing up as the eldest son of Margaret and Robert Henrik, he had been groomed from childhood to take over the family business. His father, a demanding perfectionist who measured affection in profit margins, had taught him that success required sacrifice. Relationships were distractions. Emotions were weaknesses to be managed, not indulged. For years, Calder had believed this philosophy. He had dated casually through college and his early 20s, keeping women at arm's length while he focused on building his empire. Then, at 31, he had met Victoria Ashford at a charity gala. Victoria was everything his social circle expected in a future Mrs. Henrik: elegant, well-connected, beautiful in the polished way that graced magazine covers. For 18 months, Calder had allowed himself to believe in the possibility of having both success and companionship. He had proposed on Christmas Eve, offering her a ring that cost more than most people's homes. The betrayal came 6 weeks before their wedding. "I don't actually love you, Calder," Victoria had said, sitting in the very chair where his latest potential business partner now conducted meetings. "I love what you represent, security, status, the life you can provide. But you, the man underneath all of this?" She had gestured around his office dismissively. "I don't even know who that is." The engagement had ended that day. Victoria kept the ring. He told her to consider it payment for her honesty. But something fundamental had broken inside Calder's chest, a piece of himself he had assumed would heal with time. 3 years later, it hadn't. The revelation about his own capacity for fatherhood had come through an unexpected source, his younger sister, Elena. She had struggled with fertility for 7 heartbreaking years before finally choosing adoption. Watching Elena hold her daughter, Sarah, for the first time had awakened something primal in Calder. "You'd make an amazing father," Elena had told him during one of their weekly dinners. "I know you think you're too damaged for love, but children don't care about your walls, Cal. They just need you to show up." The conversation had planted a seed that grew over several months. Why was he waiting for a relationship that might never materialize? Why should his desire to be a father depend on finding a woman willing to overlook his emotional unavailability? The decision to pursue surrogacy had shocked everyone in his circle. His business partners questioned his judgment. His mother worried about scandal. His friends assumed it was another calculated move in his quest for control. Only Elena understood. "You're not broken, Calder," she had said when he told her about his decision. "You're just careful. There's nothing wrong with wanting to build a family on your own terms." The Midwest Surrogacy Institute came highly recommended by his personal attorney. Dr. Patricia Chen, the agency director, had explained the process with clinical precision during their initial consultation. "We carefully screen all our surrogates, Mr. Henrik," she had said, sliding a folder across her desk. "Physical health, mental health, background checks, psychological evaluations. Our success rate is among the highest in the country, and we pride ourselves on maintaining clear boundaries between our clients and surrogates." Those boundaries had seemed logical to Calder. This would be a business transaction, significant compensation for a valuable service. He would provide the genetic material and financial support. His surrogate would carry his child to term. At the end of 9 months, he would have what he wanted most, a family. The psychological evaluation had been more invasive than he'd expected. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the staff psychologist, had probed into his motivations, his support systems, his plans for single parenthood. "Tell me about your relationship history, Mr. Henrik." "It's not extensive," he had replied honestly. "I've prioritized my career. And you feel ready to prioritize a child? Children require consistency, stability, and resources. I can provide all 3 better than most married couples." Dr. Martinez had made notes he couldn't read. "What happens if you meet someone while your surrogate is pregnant? How would that affect your arrangement?" Calder had almost laughed at the question. "That's not a concern. I'm not looking for romantic entanglements." "Never say never, Mr. Henrik. Life has a way of surprising us." The matching process had taken 6 weeks. The agency presented him with profiles of 5 potential surrogates, women aged 25 to 30. 5, all with clean medical histories and compelling personal reasons for choosing surrogacy. Some needed money for education. Others wanted to help infertile couples after their own successful pregnancies. One profile had stood out immediately. Keslin Mitchell, 28 years old, master's degree in social work from Northwestern University, currently employed as a family counselor at a community center on Chicago's South Side. No criminal background, excellent physical health, strong psychological evaluation, but it was her personal statement that had captured his attention. "I believe every child deserves to be wanted and loved. My grandmother taught me that the greatest gift we can give is helping others achieve their dreams. This surrogacy will allow me to do exactly that while providing the financial means to care for the woman who raised me after my parents' death. I promise to treat this pregnancy with the respect and dedication it deserves." There was something in those words, a quiet dignity, a sense of purpose beyond financial gain, that separated Keslin Mitchell from the other candidates. When Dr. Chen had called to confirm his choice, Calder had barely hesitated. "I'd like to move forward with Miss Mitchell. Excellent choice. She's one of our most dedicated surrogates. I'll arrange the initial meeting for next week." As he prepared to leave his office that evening, Calder reflected on how different his life was about to become. In less than a year, he would be a father. He would have someone who needed him completely, someone who would love him unconditionally. He had no way of knowing that the woman he'd chosen to carry his child would end up carrying his heart as well. If you believe everyone deserves love, even those who've convinced themselves they don't need it, go ahead and hit that like button. Because sometimes the universe has plans that are far more beautiful than the ones we make for ourselves. The meeting that would change everything was just 7 days away. The conference room on the 42nd floor had been chosen specifically for its neutrality. Calder had rejected the idea of meeting in his personal office. Too intimidating, too much of a power imbalance. He wanted his potential surrogate to feel comfortable, at ease, willing, to speak honestly about the arrangement they were about to enter. What he hadn't anticipated was how thoroughly unprepared he would be for the woman who walked through that door. Kesslyn Mitchell arrived exactly 3 minutes early. She wore a simple navy blue dress that spoke of professionalism without pretense, and her natural hair was pulled back in neat protective twists. But it was her posture that struck Calder first, shoulders squared, chin lifted, spine straight as steel. This was not a woman who apologized for taking up space. When their eyes met across the conference table, something shifted in the atmosphere. Her gaze held warmth, yes, but also a wariness that suggested she had learned through experience to be cautious with new people. Calder recognized that look. He saw it in his own mirror every morning. "Mr. Henrik," she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Please, sit." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Can I offer you water? Coffee?" "Water would be fine, thank you." As he poured from the crystal pitcher, he studied her more closely. Her skin seemed to glow with health, deep brown and radiant. Her eyes, the color of dark honey in sunlight, watched him with an intelligence that made him want to choose his words carefully. "Before we proceed," Kesslyn said once they were both seated, "I want you to know something, Mr. Henrik. I'm not doing this just for the money." The statement caught him off guard. Every other candidate had emphasized their financial motivations: college debt, mortgage payments, business ventures. Honesty about monetary needs was expected, even encouraged. But here was Kesslyn Mitchell, opening with what sounded almost like a disclaimer. "Then why?" he asked, genuinely curious. She took a breath, and for the first time, her composure flickered slightly. "My grandmother raised me after my parents passed when I was 7. Car accident. Drunk driver crossed the median on I-94. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "My grandmother, Odessa is her name, she gave up everything to take care of me. Her social life, her retirement plans, her own dreams. She worked double shifts as a nurse until her knees gave out, just to make sure I had what I needed." Calder found himself leaning forward, drawn into her story despite his usual emotional distance. "Last year, she was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's," Kesslyn continued. "The in-home care she needs, the specialists, the medications, none of it is covered adequately by her insurance. I've spent my career helping other families navigate these exact situations. I have a master's degree in social work, Mr. Henrik. I know how the system fails people." Her voice remained steady, but her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "This surrogacy will give me the financial means to ensure my grandmother lives her remaining years with dignity and comfort. She sacrificed everything for me. Now it's my turn." The room fell silent. Calder had reviewed dozens of surrogacy profiles over the past months. He had read countless personal statements filled with reasonable justifications and practical explanations. But nothing had prepared him for this. A woman who was willing to give her body, her time, her comfort, all in service of love. This wasn't a transaction. This was devotion. "Your grandmother sounds like an extraordinary woman," he said quietly. "She is..." Kesslyn's smile was soft, private. "She always told me that strength isn't about never needing help. It's about knowing when to ask for it and being brave enough to accept it." Something cracked in Calder's chest, a hairline fracture in the wall he had spent years constructing. The meeting continued for another hour. They discussed medical protocols, legal frameworks, and communication expectations. But throughout the conversation, Calder found his attention drifting from logistics to the woman herself. The way she listened with her whole body. The thoughtful pauses before she answered difficult questions. The quiet confidence that never crossed into arrogance. By the time they shook hands again at the meeting's end, Calder had made his decision. 2 weeks later, after the legal contracts were signed and the medical procedures completed, traditional surrogacy using Keslin's egg and Calder's genetic material, Calder made an unusual request. "I'd like you to consider moving into my guest house," he said during their first official check-in. "It's a fully furnished cottage on my estate in Kenilworth. You'd have complete privacy, but I'd be nearby if you needed anything." Keslin's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's not standard protocol, Mr. Henrik. I'm aware, but you're carrying my child. Your well-being is my responsibility. I'd feel better knowing you had access to proper care and support. I can take care of myself." Her voice carried an edge, not anger, but the defensive reflex of someone who had spent too long proving her independence. "I don't doubt that for a moment," Calder replied. "But just because you can, doesn't mean you should have to. Not right now." She studied him for a long moment, searching his face for ulterior motives. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her concerns, because eventually she nodded. "Fine, but this doesn't change our arrangement. This is still business." "Of course," Calder agreed. But even as he spoke the words, he knew something fundamental had already begun to shift. The woman standing before him wasn't just his surrogate. She was a mystery he found himself wanting to solve, a story he desperately wanted to understand. And that realization terrified him more than any business deal ever had. The guest cottage sat 300 yards from the main house, nestled among oak trees that had witnessed generations of Henrik family history. Keslin had expected to feel like an outsider in such elegant surroundings, the manicured lawns, the stone, pathways lit by antique lanterns, the quiet wealth that whispered from every carefully maintained detail. Instead, she found unexpected peace. For the first few weeks, she and Calder maintained their agreed-upon distance. He checked in regularly through text messages and brief phone calls, always professional, always respectful. She attended her medical appointments, took her prenatal vitamins, and tried to ignore the strange emptiness that settled over her evenings. The shift began on a Tuesday night during her 3rd week at the estate. Keslin had been craving her grandmother's gumbo for days. The rich, dark roux, the holy trinity of onions, celery, and bell peppers, the andouille sausage that Odessa always insisted on sourcing from a specific butcher on the south side. Cooking had always been Keslin's meditation, the one activity that quieted the constant noise in her mind. So she had gathered ingredients from the main house kitchen. Calder had given her full access and lost herself in the familiar rhythms of chopping, stirring, and seasoning. She hadn't heard him come in. "That smells incredible." Keslin spun around, wooden spoon raised like a weapon. Calder stood in the kitchen doorway, his suit jacket discarded, his sleeves rolled to reveal muscular forearms. He looked different outside the context of conference rooms and business meetings, more human somehow, more approachable. "You startled me," she said, lowering the spoon. "I apologize. I saw the lights on and wanted to make sure everything was okay." His eyes drifted to the pot on the stove. "Is that gumbo? My grandmother's recipe. She taught me when I was 12. Keslin turned back to her stirring. "I made too much, if you're hungry." The invitation had slipped out before she could stop it. Professional boundaries, she reminded herself. This is still business. But Calder was already moving toward the cabinet, where the bowls were stored. "I haven't had homemade gumbo since my mother tried to make it for my father's birthday 15 years ago. It was not successful." Despite herself, Keslin laughed. "Let me guess, she didn't cook the roux long enough? She burned it completely." The smoke alarm went off, and my father spent the rest of the evening complaining about the smell in his suits. Calder's smile held a trace of sadness. He wasn't an easy man to please. They ate together at the kitchen island, and something about the intimacy of shared food loosened the careful formality between them. Keslin found herself telling stories about her grandmother, Odessa's legendary stubbornness, her refusal to let anyone help her in the kitchen, her habit of singing Etta James while she cooked. "She sounds remarkable," Calder said. "She's the strongest person I've ever known. When my parents died, she was already 62 years old. Most people would have sent me into the foster system or handed me off to distant relatives. But she showed up at the hospital that night, took one look at me and said, "You're coming home with me, baby girl. We're going to be just fine." Keslin's voice caught on the memory. She hadn't spoken about this to anyone outside her therapist in years. "And were you?" Calder asked softly. "Just fine." Eventually. It took time. But Grandma Odessa never let me feel sorry for myself. She'd say, "Grief is a river, Keslin. You can't stop it from flowing, but you can choose whether to drown in it or learn to swim." Calder was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "My father died 4 years ago. Heart attack at his desk. He was reviewing profit margins when it happened." He shook his head slowly. "I don't think I've ever properly grieved him. I didn't know how. He never taught me what to do with difficult emotions, except push them aside and keep working. Maybe that's something you can teach your child differently," Keslin offered. Their eyes met across the counter, and the air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken understanding. Here were two people shaped by loss, by responsibility, by the weight of expectations they had never chosen to carry. Those dinners became a ritual neither of them named, but both anticipated. Every evening, Keslin would cook, partly because she needed the activity, partly because she had discovered that feeding people was her love language, even when love wasn't supposed to be part of the equation. Calder would arrive home from the office, shed his corporate armor, and join her in the kitchen. They talked about everything: books they had loved as children, movies that had shaped their worldviews, the dreams they had abandoned, and the ones they still secretly harbored. Keslin learned that Calder had once wanted to be an architect before his father had redirected him toward business. He learned that she wrote poetry in a leather journal she had owned since college, but had never shown anyone. She discovered that beneath his controlled exterior lived a man who felt things deeply but had simply never been given permission to express them. "You're not what I expected," she admitted one night as they washed dishes together. She washed. He dried, a domestic routine that had developed without either of them acknowledging it. "What did you expect?" Someone colder, more distant. The CEO persona. She handed him a soapy plate. "But you're actually—" "What?" She hesitated. "Kind. You're kind, Calder. In ways you don't seem to realize." He stopped drying the plate, his expression unreadable. "No one has called me kind in a very long time." "Then people haven't been paying attention." The comment settled between them like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through everything they had been carefully not discussing. The weeks turned into months. Keslin's belly grew rounder, and with it, something else expanded. An invisible thread connecting her to the man whose child she carried. She caught herself looking forward to their evening conversations with an eagerness that felt dangerous. She noticed the disappointment that flickered through her when business kept him late at the office. She began choosing her clothes with more care, telling herself it was about comfort, when she knew it was something else entirely. "This is dangerous," she told herself repeatedly. "This is not part of the plan." But even as the warning echoed in her mind, she found herself unable to retreat behind the professional walls she had initially constructed. Every shared meal, every quiet conversation, every moment of unexpected laughter was dismantling her defenses brick by brick. Calder was fighting his own losing battle against feelings he had promised himself would never surface again. He noticed everything about her now. The way she hummed while she cooked, always the same Etta James songs her grandmother had loved. The gentle curve of her smile when something genuinely amused her. The fierce intelligence that sparked in her honey-colored eyes when she discussed social justice issues she cared about. The unconscious habit she had of resting her hand on her growing belly, as if reassuring the life inside that it was safe and wanted. He was falling. He knew it with the same certainty he knew quarterly projections and market trends. He tried to stop it, applying the same disciplined control that had made him successful in business. But how do you stop yourself from falling when every moment with someone feels like coming home to a place you never knew existed? One evening during her 5th month, as they sat together on his back porch watching the sun set over the lake, Keslin asked him something that caught him completely off guard. Do you ever wonder what your life would look like if you'd made different choices? Calder considered the question carefully. All the time. Especially lately. What would you change? I would have been braver, he said quietly. I would have taken more risks with my heart instead of just my money. Kesslin turned to look at him, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. It's not too late, you know. To be brave. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them was ready to name. If you've ever experienced an unexpected connection that changed the direction of your life, drop a comment below and tell me about it. Sometimes the relationships that transform us most are the ones we never saw coming. 6 months into the pregnancy, Calder sat alone in his home office well past midnight, reviewing the updated medical file the agency had sent through their secure client portal earlier that day. Standard procedure, he reminded himself. Just confirming everything was progressing normally according to the agency's protocols. The physical health reports were excellent. Blood pressure stable. No gestational complications. The baby was developing perfectly, strong heartbeat, appropriate size for the gestational age. Kesslin's glucose levels were ideal. Her iron counts were good. Everything was exactly as it should be. He almost closed the file without reading further into the supplementary documents. But a section header caught his attention. Psychological evaluation update, 6-month assessment. Curious, he clicked to expand the document. Dr. Martinez conducted these follow-ups with all surrogates at regular intervals, checking in on emotional well-being as pregnancies progressed. Most of the content was routine, assessments of emotional stability, coping mechanisms, support systems. Kesslin had reported feeling physically comfortable, emotionally balanced, and satisfied with the arrangement. She spoke positively about her relationship with Calder, describing him as respectful and supportive. Then, Calder reached a paragraph near the end that made him stop breathing. Subject continues to demonstrate exceptional emotional resilience and mature coping strategies throughout the pregnancy. When asked about support systems outside of her grandmother, subject acknowledged limited social connections due to work demands and caretaking responsibilities. Of particular note, subject reports no history of romantic relationships. No prior intimate experiences of any kind. Subject attributes this to prioritizing educational and career goals, as well as extensive caretaking responsibilities for elderly grandmother. Subject shows no distress regarding this history and demonstrates healthy self-awareness about her life choices. Clinical assessment, no intervention recommended at this time. Calder read the words 3 times, certain he was misunderstanding the clinical language. Then, a 4th time, more slowly. Kesslin Mitchell, this brilliant, beautiful, compassionate woman who had walked into his conference room 6 months ago with her head held high, had never been in love, had never been held by someone who desired her, had never experienced the tender vulnerability of romantic intimacy, had never been kissed, had never been touched with affection by someone who saw her as desirable. At 28 years old, she had given everything to others. Her youth had belonged to her education. Countless hours studying to earn scholarships, because her grandmother's nursing salary could only stretch so far. Her early 20s had been devoted to building her career, to becoming someone who could help families navigate impossible systems. And when her grandmother's health had declined, Kesslin had stepped in without hesitation, sacrificing whatever remained of her personal life to care for the woman who had raised her. There had been no time for dating, no space for romance, no room for her own heart. And now she was here, in his guest house, her body changing and stretching to accommodate his child. She had entered into this arrangement, offering the most intimate gift a woman could give, and she had done so without ever having been shown what intimacy truly meant. The realization struck Calder like a physical blow to his chest. He pushed back from his desk and walked to the window, staring out at the darkness beyond. The cottage lights glowed warmly in the distance. Kesslin was probably cooking dinner, or reading one of the novels she devoured at an impressive pace, or calling her grandmother as she did every evening without fail. What had the world done to this woman? Or rather, what had the world failed to do for her? She was extraordinary. Anyone with eyes could see that. her intelligence, her grace, her unwavering strength, her capacity for compassion. These were qualities that should have drawn people to her like moths to flame. And yet somehow she had slipped through life unnoticed by anyone who might have cherished her the way she deserved. Calder thought about Victoria, who had seen him only as a means to an end. He thought about all the women who had approached him at galas and business functions. Over the years, drawn by his wealth and status rather than anything real or authentic, he had assumed he was uniquely damaged, that his inability to trust was a personal failing born of specific betrayal. But Kesslin had experienced something perhaps even more painful than betrayal. She had experienced invisibility. She had moved through the world giving and giving, pouring herself out for others, and no one had stopped to give back to her. Until now, the thought crystallized in his mind with sudden, startling clarity that felt almost like destiny. She doesn't know what it feels like to be treasured. She doesn't know that she's worthy of being pursued, cherished, adored. She's never experienced what it means to be someone's priority, and I'm going to show her. It wasn't about romance. Not exactly. Calder knew better than to confuse gratitude with love, proximity with destiny. But something primal had awakened in him, something that demanded action rather than passive observation. This woman had entered his life expecting nothing more than a financial transaction. She had offered him the gift of family, while believing herself unworthy of receiving the same. He couldn't change her past. He couldn't undo the years of loneliness and sacrifice that had shaped her. But he could change what happened next. He could show her what she had been missing. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would begin showing Kesslin Mitchell exactly how precious she was to someone who truly saw her. Not because he expected anything in return. Not because he wanted to complicate their arrangement or cross professional boundaries, but because someone needed to. And he was the one who was here, who had been given this opportunity. The weight of his decisions settled over him like a mantle, heavy but right. For the first time in years, Calder Henrik felt something stir in his chest, that he had believed permanently dormant after Victoria's betrayal. Hope. The next evening, Kesslin made her way to the main house at their usual dinner. Time, carrying a container of homemade cornbread she had baked that afternoon. The pregnancy had intensified her nesting instincts, and cooking had become even more therapeutic than usual. She was humming one of her grandmother's favorite songs when she opened the kitchen door. Then she stopped completely, her breath catching in her throat. The kitchen had been transformed. Candles flickered on every surface, the countertops, the island, the windowsills, casting warm golden light across the space. Soft music played from somewhere she couldn't identify, a jazz standard she recognized from her grandmother's record collection. The table, usually casual and functional, was set with china so delicate it looked like it might shatter at a touch. Crystal glasses caught the candlelight, throwing tiny rainbows across the white tablecloth. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Calder emerged from the dining room, and Kesslin felt her heart skip. He wasn't wearing one of his usual business suits. Instead, he wore a simple black sweater that hugged his muscular chest and shoulders in a way that made her mouth go dry. His expression was softer than she had ever seen it, vulnerable in a way that made something flutter deep in her stomach. "This," he said quietly, stepping closer, "is what you deserve." "I don't understand." The cornbread container trembled slightly in her hands. He crossed the space between them and gently took the container from her, setting it on the counter. Then he turned back to face her fully, his dark eyes searching hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Kesslin, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear every word." He took a breath. "I know you've never experienced certain things, and I know that's not my business. Your personal life is your own. But I also know that you've spent your entire life giving to others, to your grandmother, to the families you serve through your work, and now to me, carrying my child, sacrificing your comfort and your body for someone you barely knew 6 months ago." Her eyes widened. "How did you—" "The updated psychological evaluation," he admitted. "I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to invade your privacy, but I saw it. And Kesslin—" His voice dropped lower, rougher. "It broke something open in me. Or maybe it healed something. I'm still not sure which. She felt heat rising in her cheeks. The idea that he knew, that he had read those clinical descriptions of her, inexperience, her isolation, made her want to disappear into the floor. It's not a big deal. I just never had time for... Stop. The word was gentle but firm. Don't diminish yourself. Don't make excuses for choices you made out of love and responsibility. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. When was the last time someone gave to you, Keslin? When was the last time someone treated you like you were precious? Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. Calder, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His hands moved as if to reach for her, then hesitated, asking permission without words. Tonight isn't about expectations. It's not about the contract or the baby or any of our practical arrangements. Tonight is simply about showing you that you are worthy of being cherished. Because you are, Keslin. You're extraordinary, and the fact that no one has shown you that before is a failure of everyone who's ever had the privilege of knowing you. A single tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. He raised his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and gently brushed the tear from her skin with his thumb. The touch was feather-light, reverent, as if she were made of something infinitely delicate. She trembled. The sensation of his skin against hers sent shockwaves through her entire body. No one had touched her like this, with tenderness, with desire barely restrained, with the kind of attention that made her feel seen down to her soul. Her breath came faster, and she couldn't seem to make her lungs work properly. "You're trembling," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I've never—" She started, then stopped, unsure how to finish. Never been touched like this, never felt like this, never wanted something so badly while simultaneously being terrified of it. "I know," he said softly, "and that ends tonight. Not because I want anything from you, not because this changes our arrangement or creates obligations, but because you need to know how it feels to be treated like the queen you are." He took her hand, the one that wasn't pressed against her rounded belly, and led her to the table. He pulled out her chair with old-fashioned courtesy, waiting until she was seated before taking his own place across from her. The meal he had prepared was simple, but perfect. Roasted chicken with herbs, asparagus that must have cost a fortune this time of year, wild rice with dried cranberries, everything plated beautifully, clearly done by a professional chef he had hired for the evening. But it wasn't the food that held her attention. It was the way he looked at her. Throughout dinner, Calder asked her questions, real questions, not the polite small talk that usually passed for conversation. He wanted to know about her childhood memories with her grandmother. What songs did Odessa sing while cooking? What stories had she told about the old days? What traditions had she passed down? Keslin found herself opening up in ways she never had before, sharing memories she had kept locked away because no one had ever seemed genuinely interested. "Grandma Odessa used to tell me about participating in the sit-ins during the civil rights movement," Keslin said, her eyes distant with memory. She was only 17, terrified out of her mind, but she said some things were worth being afraid for. "She taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right even when your hands are shaking." "She sounds like she was an incredible woman," Calder said. "I would have loved to meet her in her prime. She's still incredible," Keslin replied softly. "Just fading. Some days she knows exactly who I am. Other days she thinks I'm her sister who passed away 20 years ago. It's like watching someone slip away in slow motion." He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The gesture was simple, natural, but it sent warmth flooding through her entire body. "I'm sorry you're going through that," he said, "and I'm sorry you've been going through it alone. I'm used to handling things alone. I know you are. But you don't have to anymore, not if you don't want to." The weight of his words settled over her like a blanket, comforting and terrifying in equal measure. After dinner, he suggested they move to the living room where she could be more comfortable. He had arranged pillows and cushions on the sofa, clearly thinking about her increasingly uncomfortable pregnancy body. She settled into the nest of softness while he poured her sparkling water in one of the crystal glasses. "I have something for you," he said, disappearing into the hallway for a moment before returning with a leather-bound book. Keslin's breath caught when she recognized it. Is that? First edition of Their Eyes Were Watching God, signed by Zora Neale Hurston herself. He placed it gently in her hands. I know you mentioned it's your favorite novel. I thought you might like to have something special. She stared at the book, then at him, her emotions threatening to overflow. Calder, this must have cost. Don't think about the cost. Think about the fact that I was listening when you told me what matters to you. He sat down beside her, not too close, still respectful of her space. That's what tonight is about, Keslin. I'm showing you what it looks like when someone pays attention. When someone cares enough to remember the details. She ran her fingers over the leather binding, overwhelmed. Why are you doing this? Because you deserve it. Because in 6 months of knowing you, I've watched you give everything, to everyone around you. And I haven't seen anyone give back to you. Because the idea that you've gone 28 years without being shown how remarkable you are makes me want to spend every remaining day proving it to you. Calder. Her voice broke. He turned to face her more fully, his expression open in a way she had never seen from the controlled CEO who had interviewed her 6 months ago. I'm not asking for anything, Keslin. I'm not trying to complicate our arrangement or make you uncomfortable. I just need you to hear this, to believe it. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of being someone's priority. You are worthy of being treasured. The tears came then, not just one or two, but a flood she couldn't control. Years of loneliness, of convincing herself she didn't need romance, of watching everyone around her find connections while she remained on the outside. All of it came pouring out. Calder gathered her into his arms carefully, mindful of her belly, and held her while she cried against his chest. His hand stroked her back in slow, soothing circles. He murmured soft reassurances into her hair. He didn't try to stop her tears or tell her everything was fine. He just held her, giving her the safety to finally break down. When her tears finally subsided, she pulled back slightly to look at him. His sweater was damp from her crying, but he didn't seem to care. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to be loved. His smile was gentle, almost sad. Then let me teach you. We'll figure it out together, one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people seeing where this goes. What about the baby? What about our agreement? Our baby, he corrected softly. Whether you choose to explore this with me or not, that child will always connect us. But Keslin, I'm hoping, praying, that you'll choose to stay in my life, not as my surrogate, not as an obligation, but as someone I care about deeply, someone I want to know better, someone I want to show the world to. She reached up with a trembling hand and touched his face, marveling at the way his eyes fluttered closed at her touch. This man, this powerful, successful CEO who commanded boardrooms and built empires, trembled beneath her fingertips like she was the most precious thing he had ever held. I don't have experience with any of this, she said slowly. But I know that what I feel when I'm with you is unlike anything I've ever known. You make me feel seen, Calder. You make me feel worthy. And I think I want to explore this. Whatever this is. He turned his head and pressed a kiss to her palm. Tender, reverent, full of unspoken promises. The warmth of his lips against her skin sent electricity racing through her veins. Then let me court you properly, he whispered against her hand. Let me show you all the experiences you've missed. Let me prove that you are worth every moment of attention, every gesture of affection, every ounce of devotion I can offer. Court me. She almost laughed through her tears. People don't do that anymore. Then we'll bring it back. Starting tomorrow, and he did. Over the following weeks, Calder made it his personal mission to give Keslin every experience she had denied herself. He arranged a private viewing at the Art Institute after hours, a privilege his substantial donations afforded him. She wandered through the galleries in wonder, stopping before paintings she had only seen in textbooks. He watched her face illuminate before Monet's water lilies, studied the tears. That slipped down her cheeks as she stood before Hopper's nighthawks. It's so lonely, she whispered, staring at the late-night diner scene. "But beautiful, like you," he said softly. She turned to look at him, surprised. "I'm not lonely anymore." "No," he agreed. "Neither am I." He took her to the lakefront at sunset, spreading blankets on the grass where they could watch the sky turn impossible shades of orange and purple. When the wind picked up and she shivered, he wrapped a cashmere throw around her shoulders and pulled her gently against his side. He read to her when her back ached too much from the pregnancy for her to focus on pages herself. They discovered a shared love of James Baldwin and Toni Morrison, spending hours discussing the way language could capture experiences that seemed too big for words. "You have a beautiful reading voice," she told him one evening as they sat together in his library. "You have a beautiful everything," he replied without hesitation. Each gesture, each moment, was teaching Kesslin something she had never allowed herself to believe, that she was worthy of this kind of attention, that her happiness mattered, that she deserved to be someone's priority. If this story is touching your heart, I want you to do something for me. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's been giving so much to others that they've forgotten they deserve to receive love too. You never know whose life might change because you took a moment to pass this along. The walls around both their hearts were crumbling, brick by carefully constructed brick, and neither of them wanted to stop it anymore. The courtship that developed between Calder and Kesslin over the following weeks was unlike anything either of them had experienced before. For Kesslin, it was all new, every gesture, every moment of tenderness, every experience of being prioritized by someone who had no obligation to care. For Calder, it was a rediscovery of what romance could be when it was built on genuine connection rather than social expectation or material attraction. He was learning her in ways that felt both thrilling and terrifying. One Saturday afternoon in early November, Calder took Kesslin to the Chicago Botanic Garden. The autumn air was crisp but not yet bitter, and the garden still held pockets of color, deep burgundy leaves, late-blooming chrysanthemums, ornamental grasses swaying in the breeze. They walked slowly, accommodating her 7-month pregnancy body, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. She had stopped protesting his constant attention, had begun to accept that he genuinely wanted to be near her. "My mother used to bring me here when I was young," Calder said as they passed through the Japanese garden, "before my father decided that free time was wasted time. She loved the water features, the way everything was designed to create peace." "What happened to her?" Kesslin asked gently. "You never talk about her in present tense." "Cancer. I was 23, just finishing my MBA." His jaw tightened with old grief. "She made me promise her something before she died. She said, 'Don't become your father, Calder. Don't let the business consume everything soft inside you.' I thought I was keeping that promise by staying single, by not inflicting my damaged self on anyone else. But I think I missed her point entirely." Kesslin stopped walking and turned to face him. "You're not damaged, Calder. You're careful. There's a difference." "Is there?" He looked down at her, this woman who was seeing parts of him he had kept hidden for years. "I built walls so high that no one could reach me. I convinced myself I was protecting people when really I was just protecting myself. And now?" she asked softly. "Now those walls are crumbling." He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly tender. "You're demolishing them without even trying, Kesslin. Every time you laugh at something I say, every time you trust me with a memory, every time you look at me like I'm someone worth knowing beyond my bank account." She felt her breath catch. "Calder, I know this is complicated," he continued. "I know we started this as a business arrangement, but I can't pretend anymore that what I feel is professional courtesy. I'm falling for you, Kesslin. I've been falling since that first dinner when you told me your grandmother taught you that grief is a river." Before she could respond, he took her hand and led her to a bench overlooking a koi pond. They sat together, his arm around her shoulders, her head eventually resting against his chest. "Tell me about your first heartbreak," she said after a long silence. He almost laughed. "You already know about Victoria." "No, I know about your broken engagement." But what was your first heartbreak? Before you learned to protect yourself? The question caught him off guard. He was quiet for so long that Kesslin thought he might not answer. Then, softly, I was 8 years old. There was a girl in my class named Rebecca Chen. She had pigtails and glasses, and she was the smartest person I'd ever met. I gave her a Valentine's card I'd made myself, spent hours on it, drawing terrible pictures and writing terrible poetry. What happened? She laughed. Not cruelly, just... She thought it was funny that Calder Henrik, the rich kid, was trying to win her over with a homemade card instead of something expensive. She told me if I really liked her, I would have bought her something nice. He shook his head at the memory. I went home and asked my father for money to buy her a gift. He said, "Good, you're learning. In this world, people measure your worth by what you can provide them. Never forget that." Kesslin's heart ached for the 8-year-old boy who had learned such a terrible lesson so young. Your father was wrong. Was he? Victoria proved him right. One person proved one thing on one occasion. That's not a universal truth, Calder. That's just one woman who didn't deserve you. She shifted to look up at him. I don't want your money. I never have. The surrogacy payment was always about my grandmother, not about me wanting access to your wealth. I know that now. It's part of why I'm falling so hard. The admission hung between them, heavy with possibility. Their conversations grew deeper as the days passed. One evening, as Kesslin prepared dinner, she had insisted, despite Calder's protests, that she should rest. He asked her something that had been weighing on his mind. Do you have regrets about the choices you made, the relationships you didn't pursue? She paused in her chopping, considering. I used to think I didn't. I told myself that everything I sacrificed was worth it, because I was helping people, taking care of my grandmother. But, lately, she set down the knife. Lately, I've been wondering what my life might have looked like if I'd believed I deserved both, if I'd thought I could have a career and love, care for my grandmother and still make space for my own heart. You can have both now, Calder said quietly. If you want to. She turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. Can I? This situation we're in, it's not exactly conventional. You're about to become a father. I'm carrying your child, but I'm not the mother. How does this even work? However we want it to work. He stood and crossed to where she was standing, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. There's no rulebook for this, Kesslin. We write our own story. I'm scared, she admitted in a whisper. So am I. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumbs stroking her skin with heartbreaking gentleness. I'm terrified that I'll mess this up, that I'll hurt you, that I'm too broken to give you what you deserve. But I'm more afraid of not trying, of letting you walk out of my life at the end of this pregnancy and spending the rest of my existence wondering what we could have been. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed. What are we doing, Calder? I think we're falling in love, he murmured, and I think we should stop fighting it. Her eyes opened, meeting his. The air between them thickened, charged with electricity and longing and months of accumulated tension. His gaze dropped to her lips, and she saw the question there, the request for permission. She had never been kissed, had never known what it felt like to be wanted this way. Her heart hammered against her ribs as he leaned closer, giving her every opportunity to pull away. His breath was warm against her skin. His eyes never left hers, asking, always asking, never taking. Calder, she breathed. Tell me to stop, and I will, he whispered, his lips now inches from hers. But she didn't want him to stop. For the first time in her life, she wanted to be selfish, to take something just for herself. She closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft, tentative, achingly gentle. His lips brushed against hers like a question, and when she responded, her hand coming. Up to grip his sweater, her body swaying toward his. The kiss deepened slightly. He was careful, so careful, mindful of her inexperience and her pregnant body. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kesslin felt tears streaming down her face. Did I hurt you? Calder asked immediately, his expression panicked. No, she managed, laughing through her tears. No, you didn't hurt me. I never knew it could feel like this, like coming home. He pulled her carefully into his arms, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other resting protectively on her lower back. We're going to figure this out together, he promised against her hair. Whatever this becomes, wherever this goes, we'll do it together. And for the first time in her life, Kesslin believed that maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to have everything she'd always denied herself. Love had found her when she least expected it, in the last place she thought to look. The call came on a Thursday evening during Kesslin's 7th month of pregnancy. She had been sitting in the cottage, folding tiny onesies she had purchased. For the baby, a ritual that had become oddly comforting, when her phone rang. The memory care facility's number flashed across the screen, and her stomach dropped. Ms. Mitchell, this is Nurse Patterson from Riverside Memory Care. I'm calling about your grandmother. Kesslin's hands went cold. What happened? She's physically fine, but there's been a significant cognitive decline over the past week. She's become increasingly agitated, doesn't recognize the staff, and she's been asking for someone, named Kesslin. Though when you visited yesterday, she didn't seem to know who you were. The words hit like physical blows. What are you saying? The doctor is recommending we move her to the specialized unit. It provides more intensive care, closer monitoring. But Ms. Mitchell, I need to be honest with you about the cost difference. The number the nurse quoted made Kesslin's vision blur. Even with the surrogacy payment, even with her careful budgeting, the specialized unit would drain everything within 8 months. And Alzheimer's didn't work on convenient timelines. Her grandmother could live another 5 years, maybe more. I understand, Kesslin managed. Do whatever she needs. I'll figure out the finances. After she hung up, she sat in silence, her hand resting on her swollen belly. The baby kicked, strong, healthy, blissfully unaware of the crisis unfolding around it. How could she be here, comfortable in a cottage, worth more than she'd earn in a decade, while her grandmother deteriorated in a facility that smelled of industrial cleaner and resignation? What kind of granddaughter was she, carrying a stranger's child for money while the woman who had raised her slipped away alone? The guilt was suffocating. Over the following week, Kesslin withdrew into herself. She stopped coming to the main house for dinner, texting Calder polite excuses about being tired or not feeling well. She couldn't bear to sit across from him, accepting his kindness and attention, while her grandmother's condition worsened and her financial situation became increasingly desperate. She had always handled things alone. She would handle this alone too. But Calder noticed everything about Kesslin, and her absence felt like losing oxygen. On the 6th night of her self-imposed isolation, he found her in the cottage. She hadn't answered his texts or calls, and concern had overridden his respect for her privacy. He used the key she didn't know he had, given to him by the property manager for emergencies, and let himself in. The sight that greeted him shattered something in his chest. Kesslin sat on the floor surrounded by papers, medical bills, facility invoices, insurance statements. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She looked up when he entered, and the devastation in her expression made him want to tear the world apart to fix whatever was causing her this pain. Kesslin. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her. What's wrong? Is it the baby? No, the baby's fine. Her voice was hollow. Everything's fine. Don't lie to me, please. He gathered the papers scattered around her, scanning them quickly. The costs, the projections, the impossible mathematics of loving someone whose care exceeded your means. Your grandmother. She nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. She's getting worse. They want to move her to specialized care, and I can't. Calder, I can't afford it. Even with the surrogacy payment, it's not enough. And I should be there with her. Not here living in luxury while she's confused and scared and… Stop. He pulled her into his arms, careful of her belly. Listen to me carefully. Your grandmother is going to have the best care available. I'm going to make sure of it. Calder, no. I can't let you… This isn't charity, Kesslin. He pulled back to look at her face, his hands framing her tear-stained cheeks. This isn't even about the baby anymore. This is about the fact that somewhere along the way, you became essential to me. Your happiness, your peace of mind, they matter to me more than any business deal I've ever closed. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? He took a breath, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he had stopped trying to hide. Because I'm in love with you. I've been falling since the moment you walked into my office and told me you weren't in this for the money. I've been falling every time you laugh, every time you challenge me, every time you show me what real strength looks like. I love the way you hum when you cook. I love your fierce loyalty to the people you care about. I love that you write poetry you think no one will ever read. I love you, Keslin Mitchell, and I can't stand watching you carry this burden alone when I have the means to help. She stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. You love me? Completely, irrevocably, probably unwisely, given how complicated this situation is. But I don't care about complications anymore. I care about you. For 28 years, Keslin had convinced herself that love was something that happened to other people. People with time for romance, people whose lives weren't defined by responsibility and sacrifice. But here was this man, this impossible, beautiful man, offering her something she had never allowed herself to want. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I've never been in love before. I don't know the rules or how to— There are no rules, Calder interrupted gently. We make this up as we go. Together. I'm scared, so am I. But I'm more scared of losing you. His thumb brushed away her tears. Tell me what you're feeling, Keslin. Not what you think you should feel, what you actually feel. She took a shaky breath. I feel like I've been waiting my whole life without knowing what I was waiting for, and then you appeared, and suddenly everything makes sense. When I'm with you, I'm not just the caretaker or the helper or the person everyone relies on. I'm just me, and somehow that's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. I love you too, she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I think I've loved you since that first dinner when you told me about your father, and I realized you understood what it's like to carry weight that no one else can see. He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, pouring months of longing into the connection of their lips. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, he said. Calder, I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to build a life with you, be a family, you, me, and our daughter. Our daughter, she repeated, testing the words. Not just your daughter, ours. In every way that matters. 2 months later, Odessa Grace Henrik came into the world weighing 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with her mother's honey-colored eyes and her father's determined chin. Keslin's grandmother, lucid for one precious afternoon, held her great-granddaughter and whispered, You did good, baby girl. You found your happiness. Grandmother Odessa Mitchell passed peacefully 6 months later, with Keslin and Calder at her bedside. She left the world knowing her granddaughter was loved and cherished. Calder and Keslin married exactly 1 year after their first meeting, surrounded by the warmth of family and friends. The ceremony was intimate, just family and close friends, held in the garden, where they had shared their first real conversation about grief and rivers. Thank you for teaching me that I was worth loving, Keslin said through happy tears. Thank you for showing me what love actually looks like, Calder replied. They had found each other in the most unexpected way and built something extraordinary from a business arrangement. Their story became a testament to the truth that love, when it's real, is always worth the wait. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that you deserve love no matter how long you've been waiting, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because every week we bring you stories like this. Stories about real people, real struggles, and real transformations. Your support keeps this channel alive and helps these messages reach people who desperately need to hear them. Remember, you are not too damaged, too busy, too old, or too broken to deserve love. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Your responsibilities don't diminish your worth. Your loneliness is not a life sentence. Somewhere out there, Someone is looking for exactly who you are. Someone will see your strength, your scars, your sacrifices, and recognize them, not as flaws, but as proof of your incredible capacity to love and be loved. Just like Calder and Kesslin, your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be waiting to be written. All you have to do is stay open to possibility.